God willing, I am going to prove the obvious. The original Greeks, Romans, and Iberians did not look just like Vikings, but rather like me. One time I exposed Germanic Italians as not native, and one told me that race doesn't exist. Races does not exist. A race is a very extended family. You do the equivalent of big families don't exist. You have to seriously question a country that let in only 48 Gaijin refugee families in their country. If that's not extreme racism, I don't know what is. That's preserving the race so they don't become Britannistan. There's only the human race. Sure, just like only dog is a breed, Chihuahuas don't exist. Liberalism for the win. And this isn't worth reading. It's shit. Level of variability is a red herring, so is usefulness. Nitpicking and hair splitting there. Radical is a subjective term, minor also. A race is just a very extended big family. To deny that is silly liberal extremism. Some idiots claim that the ancients had every variety of colors of hair and eyes. They are ignorant of this. Ipsos Germanos indigenas credideri minimeque aliarum gentium adventibus et hospitis mixtos quia nec terra olim sed classibus adve hebantur, qui mutare sedescu aerebant et immensus ultra utque sictic serim adversus oceanus radis ab orbe nostro navibus abitur. This is from the Germania by Tacitus, or Tacitus. He said, the Germans themselves I regard as original natives to land, not mixed at all with other races through immigration or sex. For in former times it was not by land but on shipboard that those who sought to emigrate would arrive. The boundless and, so to speak, hostile ocean beyond us is seldom entered by a sail from our world. And beside the perils of rough and unknown seas, who would leave Asia or Africa or Italy for Germany with its wild country, its inclement skies, its sullen manners and aspect, unless indeed it were his home? The Roman Empire was not a melting pot where all races mixed. Many factors made intermarriage unusual, rare, or even nearly impossible. Examples: religion, language, location, racism. In Miami, I told this guy, I walked into a black neighborhood by accident. People in an empire stick together according to family, which implies race. An empire isn't a melting pot, that's a lie. It's a zoo where birds of a feather flock together, few exceptions. Now let's review history to see if indeed the demographics have changed since ancient times. Let's start with the Celts, who were the original inhabitants of Central Western Europe. They also eventually entered what is now Turkey and what is now Spain. They were also the natives of the northernmost part of Italy. Southern Germany, by the way, was originally Celtic. Germans are not natives to Germany in southern Germany, which is pretty funny. So the Huns pushed many barbarians into the Roman realm. This is common knowledge, but I have to go over it. So you got the Franks, from which comes the name France, and the Huns pushed the Goths, who were very powerful. They entered Greece, they took over Italy, and they took over Hispania. And then there were also the Vandals, who entered Iberia, and then Africa, and then Italy. Very amazing. And there were others, of course, but these were the biggest. Idiots clutching at straws had told me that there were too few barbarians to change the demographics significantly. Their ignorant opinion ignores the fact that Goths invaded and were so numerous that they were able to defeat the Byzantines at times, and were one of the most powerful tribes the Huns pushed westwards and southwards. They were so numerous that they took over both Italy and Iberia. Franks could take pretty much only France and a little bit more, so that gives you an idea of how many they were. Alaric the Goth moved south into Greece, and he sacked the port of Athens, ravaged Corinth, Megara, Argos, and Sparta. The Eastern Emperor Flavius Arcadius finally placated the Goths in 397, Anno Domini, of course, probably by appointing Alaric Magister Militum in Illyricum. So they kept settling, the Romans kept compromising, settling barbarians in their lands, changing the demographics. This is basic history. So here you got Attila the Hun, Attila means Lil Daddy-o, by the way. Doesn't sound so cool when you know what it means. Lil Daddy-o came over here, and then he penetrated over here, and then he went over here, and then he penetrated this place here. So among the rapes, you had some seed that weren't aborted, because not all women believe in murdering a child for what their father did wrong. Therefore, some people here have Hun blood, and some people here have Hun blood. Of course, the Huns weren't the main contributors of barbarian DNA. But here you got the main contributors, the Goths, who took over Italy and more. That's how numerous they were. So it was not an insignificant thing. They changed the demographics. It was a cataclysm of demographic changes. And the Western and Eastern Goths were divided. Clovis, from which the name Louis comes. These were the Franks, of course. And then in 556, I forgot which video this is from, but obviously it's not my video. Whatever. Maybe in the comment section or the description of this video, I'll put the source. My bad. So the first Bulgarian Empire, barbarians settled, and then they adopted Greek names, the Greek religion of so-called Christianity, of Mary-worshipping heretics. And they believe that they are Greeks, but they are not. They're Bulgars who forgot their roots because they prefer Greek glory because it is so much greater. Even though Bulgars were pretty glorious, as this shows. So the Kingdom of Italy, the so-called Holy, so-called Roman, so-called Empire, Charlemagne, king of the Franks, crossed the Alps to invade the kingdom of the Lombards. Lombards were other barbarians who entered Italy and changed the demographics, which is why, especially in the north of Italy, you have a lot more blondes. They're not natives. They're not true Italians. Which encompassed all of Italy except the Duchy of Rome, the Venetian Republic, and the Byzantine possessions in the south. The kingdom collapsed and the Franks became masters of northern Italy. So, Charlemagne made himself king of the Lombards, crowned emperor in Rome. This shows further barbarian blood input into southern Europe, showing that people of today's Italy, people of today's Catalonia, people of today's etc., they are barbarians. The true natives are still in the midst, but they are the minorities now, it seems. I am one of them. In 961, King Otto of the Deutsches Volk, or however you say that, already married to Queen Adelaide of Italy, invaded the kingdom and had himself crowned in Pavia, or however you say that. At that time, continuing on to Rome, had himself crowned emperor, and so Italy and Germany were united, which means Germans could enter Italy if they could afford to, or the royals allowed them to, and trade or settle there until they would eventually become Italians of today and believe that they are the original Romans. What a joke. So here it is again. Look how much of Italy the barbarians took during the Middle Ages. They've been entering and reshaping the demographics ever since what, the 2nd century or even earlier. The Normans, the Vikings of the northern peninsula of France, Normandy, of course, they went around and took over what would eventually be taken over by the Spanish almost identically. So you got a lot of blondes here. Why? Because the Vikings came and raped people and they settled too. Vikinger. Then you have this idiot who is responsible for why Europe is full of liberal shit everywhere and dumbocracy, which is a bandwagon fallacy. This puppet of the synagogue of Satan, this piece of shit here, who's burning right now as I speak. Yeah, the French, many of which are Gauls, many of which are Franks, and some other Germanics, they took over here. So they were able to, during this time, settle in these lands if they, of course, were rich enough or had permission by the authorities, which of course some did have. And that changed demographics also. Voila. Then you have the Nazis who at one point invaded Italy because it was going to get lost to the other races, the British and the USA people. So they entered Greece also. They invaded Greece. So German blood entered Greece. German input entered especially northern Italy. Even in, last century? Feels like it's like last century, 1945. Right now it's 2023. Soon is going to be 100 years since then. My math is bad, but whatever. So then here's the gringos coming in to rape women and leave their seed. So you can't tell me that the reason there are a lot of blondes in the north is just a coincidence. It's because of more invaders coming from the north who are blondes. Duh. And Sardinia has the most native Italians preserved because it's so negligible compared to Sicily, which has a much more prestigious location in trade and in history. And also, it's harder to reach Sardinia. If you're a barbarian coming here, you're going to ignore it most likely because you got all this to look at, which probably offers more. So that's why you have more natives in Sardinia, according to this. And the current Prime Minister or President of Italia is this lady who looks like she could be the daughter of Angela Merkel, for crying out loud. She's obviously Germanic. She's obviously not a native to Italy. She is a fraud, but she's very attractive. And here you see the source of blondes is Sweden, pretty much. By the Goths, their name Goth is a cognate of a place here called Gotland. I forgot where it was, somewhere around here. I'm not so familiar with Scandinavia because I've never been there, and I'm more interested in I don't know, places that have more recorded history, I guess, because there's more to look at. So yeah, now I'm going to deal with an argument that people try to use. The South has less blondes because of Carthage and the Moors for centuries, man. Thanks for admitting that invasions count. But this undermines your position because most invasions were from the north. Iberia is literally attached to Celtic lands and includes Celtic lands here too. And with easy access for Germanic people. Africa and Asia have less genetic influence due to geography, which determines much in history. So invaders from the south, Carthaginians and then Berbers with Arabs. That's pretty much it. I don't recall anyone else. Two civilizations only, Carthages and Islams. However, from the north and from other parts of Europe, Celts, Suevi, Vandals, Goths, Franks, Latins, and Greeks. 7 civilizations, with Greco-Romans lacking blondes at first. Later, the Byzantines would include some Slavs, of which some are blondes. And so they would come in and put their seed, and some of the blonde Slavs would enter Iberia and later think that they're the originals, or something like that. Well, most people in Iberia don't claim to be originals, but they wish they were, which is why they hate me when I say I'm Iberian of the original stock. Invaders with blondes, therefore, are 5 civilizations in history that entered here. And by the way, gypsies are Indians who mostly came from what is now Turkey, and Jews came from there also and from other points like Africa, but they were primarily directly from Asia by the sea or through this land route, which is the most natural way from there to get to the west, being Asians. So that's that. Part 2 next, God willing. The more politically incorrect stuff.